occasionally provided fuel for anyone's tragic post-mortem fantasies. Lee always made an attempt at getting the people who hired him to understand exactly what it was they were dealing with. It didn't matter which term they preferred: ghosts, spirits, wraiths, specters, spooks, phantoms, all just different flavors of the same phenomenon. They were imprints of people, more like echoes or distorted reflections than despondent souls. Bundles of tangled arcane essence along with a scattering of memories, all tied around a usually unachievable last goal or desire. Lee had learned early on that the job of a freelance mystic wasn't to put the departed to their final rest, or any such high-minded nonsense. It was to take people's money, commune with a ghost if one was truly present, handle it if it was dangerous, and above all, provide closure. Closure with a capital fucking C. Time and time over, he'd learned just how elusive and impossible it really was. He'd turned down grieving widows, women desperate for him to commune with their dead husbands who'd never left behind a ghost to begin with. He'd turned down grieving parents, which, to a person, had all been so heart-wrenching to interact with that he didn't let his mind wander onto those memories unbidden. Lee pushed the door to the aircraft hangar open and stepped into the cold, unilluminated space that lay beyond. The sight of the ghost hovering in the corner of the building's sprawling, singular chamber was enough to make his jaw twitch with anticipation, even though he'd known it would be there and had spent the better part of the previous day asking about the personality of the man it had once been. Was this how his clients had felt on those rare occasions when his services had allowed them to chase down an answer to that one last question? He took a deep breath, and then knocked on the door with his hand. It was a few degrees below freezing, and the sensation of his knuckles rapping against the cold, rusted metal seemed to run straight through his bones. "Dennis?" called Lee. "Can I talk with you for a minute?" He saw the ghost slowly turn to face him, its face still frozen in the oblivious, empty expression common to lesser spiritual entities. It was whitish blue in color, with a somewhat holographic appearance, though small wafts of spirit essence still billowed around its lower half, like condensation in the freezing cold. "Dennis O'Malley?" said Lee, as he began walking forward. "You were a worker here, one of the unloaders for a few less-than-legal items from a certain cargo jet?" The ghost blinked several times in quick succession before raising his arms and adopting a posture that was significantly more hostile than what Lee would have liked to see. He reached a hand into his bag, sliding his fingers past the silver Chris dagger, past the ritual powder, and settling on the new purchases he'd made earlier that morning. "Easy there," said Lee. "I'm a friend. Here." Lee pulled out a turkey bacon sandwich, a beer, and a pack of cigarettes. He held them outstretched in both arms, flashing an open smile as he watched the ghost scanning over the offering. There was awareness in those eyes, more than he'd seen in some of the spirits he'd banished. Enough to tell him that he had at least a chance of finding out what he wanted to know. What is this?" muttered Dennis. "Are you the devil? Finally come to collect my soul?" "Nope." "Then—" Dennis took a wavering step forward. "Are you an angel? Did I do it? Am I finally being called up?" "Afraid I'm not either," said Lee. "I'm not even sure that there is an up or down when it comes to, the afterlife. I'm just a guy who can see ghosts, old-timer." "Who you callin' old?" snapped Dennis. "And what do you expect me to do with this shit?" He slapped an ethereal hand through the food and vices Lee was still holding. The chill of the ghost's intangible hand making contact sent a fluttering chill through him, but didn't do much else. That was a good sign, especially if Dennis turned out to be less agreeable than he'd initially assumed. "I can help you with that," said Lee. "Here." He sucked in a slow breath, letting his eyes defocus as he breathed out. Pulling a ghost into his mystic stream was a simple matter of relaxation and will. It reminded him of looking at one of the 3D magic eye books he'd enjoyed as a child, and the analogy fit remarkably well, given the overall effect of using his ability. Dennis O'Malley's ghost gained color, form, and presence as Lee expanded his mystic stream outward to fill the nearby area. In every obvious way, he looked as though he'd been restored to life. Of course, the 3 gunshot wounds were still there, each one nestled above blood stains that ran down the cargo worker's blue jumper like accidental splotches of red paint. He'd been a middle-aged man with broad shoulders, a receding hairline, and a face markedly more wrinkled on the left side than the right. He was now staring at Lee in confusion, his eyes darting about the aircraft hangar as though he was planning on making a run for it. "It's just a little trick I learned when I was a kid," said Lee. "It lets me interact with you. I can see you and talk to you without it, but this way—" He slowly held out his arm and tapped the beer against Dennis's shoulder, which was made corporeal, at least temporarily, within the confined reality of Lee's mystic stream. The man's jaw fell open, and Lee couldn't resist grinning back at him as he twisted the easy-open bottle cap off the brew. "You can eat, drink, and even smoke, hence my gifts," said Lee. "I figured you were probably getting bored to tears just standing around in this hangar. Not enough people for you to mess with in here." Dennis continued to stare at the beer. Lee rolled his eyes and took a sip of it. "No trick. It's not poisoned, though I'm not sure it would even matter if it was." He held it out again. "It's a bitch to buy beer when you're underage. Don't let my efforts go to waste." "Kid, I don't know why you're doing all this, and I don't think I care. Thank you." Dennis finally accepted the beer, which was a novel act in itself. Lee was still holding the bottle, and from his perspective within the mystic stream, it looked as though Dennis had pulled a twin beer out of nothing. It was a quirk of how his ability worked, creating an imprint of objects that the ghosts could take with them that was separate from the physical base they were created from. Lee clinked the neck of his bottle against Dennis's, and they both took a sip. The old man let out a noise that was half laugh and half gasp before downing the rest of the beer in a few eager gulps. "There's also a sandwich and some cigs," said Lee. "Take your time." Dennis let out a small grunt. Lee lit a cigarette for the ghost, passed him the sandwich and another beer, and then gave him room to enjoy himself. 10 minutes later, Dennis slumped to a seat against the hangar's wall and let out a satisfied sigh. "You want something," said Dennis. "Damn it. What are you going to make me do in return for this?" "Answer a few questions," said Lee. "That's all." "What happens if I don't want to talk?" Lee reached into his bag and slowly removed the silver Chris dagger. He didn't pull it out of its ornate oak scabbard, but simply held it in one hand, making the potential threat clear. "If I have to, I'll disable you with silver, absorb you, and hope that whatever memories come through with your essence can answer my questions," said Lee. "But come on. That's no fun for either of us, now is it?" Dennis shrugged. "I guess it ain't." "Fine. You win, kid. What do you want to know? Who our supplier was, or who we were selling the drugs to?" Lee shook his head. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Zoe's photo. It was from her junior year of high school, one of the last good ones taken of his sister before her disappearance. "Have you seen this girl?" asked Lee. "It might have been recently. It might have been a couple of years ago. Did she ever come through this airport?" "Kid, you're fucking out of your mind if you think I could remember a face that well." Lee nodded slowly. "Figured I'd give it a shot. In that case, what can you tell me about Primhaven University?" The ghost froze in mid-movement, holding his cigarette a few inches from his lips. "Was she one of the kids that ran off to that old frozen college?" asked Dennis. "Lots of them take a flight out and never come back. I've heard some ridiculous rumors about that place, I tell you. Stuff about a cult of wizards and witches teaching them God knows what. Crazy world we live in these days." "Do you know where it is?" "I don't, but I know a few people who might take you there for the right amount of money," said Dennis. "Given what you've done for me, I see no reason why I shouldn't help you out." Lee tried to keep the victory from showing on his face as he continued sipping his own beer. He'd spent 5 years waiting to hear from his sister, searching for any clue as to what might have happened to her. He tried to find out anything he could about the school and never managed to scrounge up so much as a central phone number, let alone the name or email address of an administrator or faculty member. "They say you have to be a frickin' mage to get into that school." Dennis shot Lee a look and then burst into laughter. "Ridiculous. All of it." "That's pretty rich coming from a ghost." "Huh?" said Dennis. "Well, I guess it is. Say, are you some kind of mage too? Is that how you're doing this?" "Far from it," said Lee. "Then what is it you think you're going to do when you get there?" asked Dennis. Lee shrugged. Get some closure? Chapter 2. 2 weeks and a significant chunk of his life savings later, Lee was on a plane. It was a small plane, small enough to make him question how much rattling and shaking was really to be expected during takeoff and landing. He'd spent most of the time following up on the leads he'd found through Dennis. Few of the people he'd talked to in the small Alaskan town that was Zoe's last known location outside of Primhaven had been able to tell him anything about the school, or about her. It was essentially what Lee had been expecting. He remembered the way Zoe had spoken of the university back when she was finishing her senior year and trying to figure out what would come next. She'd told him that it was a school for mages. Lee had known about Zoe's magic, the potential, as those aware of the supernatural called it, and she'd known about his mystic abilities. He'd had so many questions for her, and she'd only seemed to know as much then as Lee felt like he knew now. Her reasons for leaving for Primhaven had been selfless. Independent mages and sorcerers tend to attract attention, even when they keep their heads down. Zoe had done it to protect him, her little brother, and she'd gone out of her way to make sure he'd be taken care of in her absence, orphans as they both were. The plane started rattling again. It was cold inside the cabin, but given how far north they'd traveled, Lee expected it to be cold everywhere. The basic winter coat he'd relied on up till that point seemed like something of a joke as the northern edge of Alaska's frozen coast came into view. So much white, with the slightest hint of ice blue. The wind was a visible thing even from so high above, always carrying tufts of snow along with it. The pilot brought the plane into a low turn and Lee spotted his destination. One of the details he had worked out from Dennis's leads was that Primhaven was built next to a small settlement known as Gillem, Alaska. The people he asked seemed to know as little about Gillem as they did about Primhaven, but it gave Lee solace to know that he'd at least have somewhere to stay, assuming the place had lodgings for travelers. Gillem, from above, didn't seem like much. A scattering of buildings, each with a snow-covered roof, and a few painted in bright pastel colors. Primhaven made even less of an impression on him. The campus was surrounded by a high, somewhat unnecessary-looking wall. The buildings within looked plain, decrepit, and extremely old. The plane shook hard enough to feel as though it was staging a rebellion as it touched down on the long, empty airstrip. Lee had been half expecting it to be carved into the ice or something, but it was proper tarmac, and seemed remarkably well maintained given how remote it was. The pilot came around to open the door for him. Lee thanked him and heard him grunt in response. He'd already paid for his flight and saw no need for further pleasantries, given that the man had made it clear that he had no intention of staying for longer than it took to drop Lee off. The cold felt like a violation of Lee's personal rights as he stepped out onto the ice. He'd thought far enough ahead to bring warm gloves with him, but his hands went to his ears as he felt a sneaking suspicion that they'd end up freezing off if he didn't find a hat at some point. He walked a few feet away from the runway, glancing back and forth between Primhaven to the north and Gillem to the south. His plan was to continue his investigation much in the same way he'd gone about it from the beginning. Ask questions, search for clues, and potentially find a way to get a tour of the campus so he could see it through his unusually perceptive eyes. Lee felt a familiar heaviness in his chest as he tried not to envision the outcome that had so often infested his nightmares. He'd come thousands of miles to figure out what happened to Zoe, and part of him was terrified that he'd find her, as a ghost. 5 years without so much as a phone call, an email, or a letter. Lee had heard nothing from Primhaven either. It was as though she'd just stopped existing at some point during her time at the school, stopped having any presence or influence in the world. He pressed his hands over his ears and started walking toward the university's gate. It was a large set of wooden double doors that looked a few centuries out of date, architecturally speaking. Lee wondered how the hell they managed to open it, especially after a snowstorm or ice buildup. He figured the answer was probably magic of some form or another. Could he just knock? Was that a valid strategy? Knock on the door and start asking questions. He was just a random stranger, not a registered student, not even someone who'd called ahead. No, he needed to be more circumspect. He needed to know what the general attitude of the university's administration was before trying something like that. He needed... "Hello," called a voice from Lee's left. "Are you one of the new initiates waiting at the lodge in Gillum?" One thing Lee had learned in his time as a freelance mystic and supernatural investigator is that there are certain questions that you always say yes to, without thinking and without hesitation. "Yes," said Lee. "Sorry, I felt like stretching my legs." The person who'd surprised him drew closer, and Lee saw that it was a woman. She was heavily bundled up, with a thick hooded winter jacket and a scarf, but from what he could see of her face, he guessed that she was in her mid to late 30s. Her skin was caramel in color, and she was tall and slender. Her arms were crossed, and there was an authoritative quality to her posture that made Lee think that she was a step above a normal instructor. "You're early," said the woman. "Admissions don't officially start until 3 p.m. Are you already pre-registered? What's your name?" "Lee Amaranth," he said. "Nice to meet you. I'm not sure if I'm pre-registered yet. I didn't realize that was required." It wasn't his real name, of course. He'd come up with it back when he'd first started advertising his mystic services online, since people were far more willing to take Lee Amaranth seriously than his birth name, Eldon Brock. Potentially, they could still trace his pseudonym back to him, but it wasn't as though Lee actually planned on committing any crimes other than trespassing. The slight insulation the false identity gave him from whatever mischief he got himself into would probably be enough. "I am Lead Instructor Mattis," said the woman. "I handle admissions for all new initiates. I'll add you to the provisional list, Lee." She shook his hand, giving it a surprisingly strong squeeze, and then looked up toward the sky. The weather was overcast, but she seemed to read something in the clouds, almost in the same way a regular person might check a pocket watch. "The hour does approach," said Mattis. "There's no point in sending you back to the lodge. You may wait here with me for now, Lee Amaranth." "Thanks," he said. He wasn't sure what to say. Asking too many direct questions about Zoe might give his ruse away. Asking questions about the university itself, in the same vein, might reveal that he was suspiciously ignorant of some critical piece of information or obvious fact that he would have otherwise known. He rubbed his hands against his cold ears again and took in his surroundings. As his eyes passed across the wall surrounding the campus, Lee saw something that made him suck in a quick breath. Ghosts tend to stand out when seen through a mystic's eyes. This one caught Lee's attention instantly. It was the ghost of a girl in a wide, flowing dress, walking along the top of the wall, gazing down at the snow below.
The pants
Being
emoji.
bisexual make you
The pants emoji.
Dude, like the jean pants emoji is like the straightest thing ever. Look at him. Hold up. Let me see. Shit.
I just got that.
As well, man. I thought you were going to sleep.
Oh.
Well, it's fucking morning now.
It's looking more.
Staff assigned.
Please specify a project. Please specify a project. Please select a mission. Caution, rain approaching. Mission accepted. Deploying.
There's 6 targets. Our contract is to kill them all. And the client is the general they served under. He wants them dead to keep them from talking. Check a VI on your iDroid for more information.
Analysis complete.
Be careful down there, boss. The 6 targets are at Bampevi Plantation and Kungenga Mine. Locate them, and then eliminate them.
Marker placed. Marker placed. Please select a deployment point.
carefully, boss.
The map has been enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Cover me.
Enemy
That's
presence
from Heavy Plantation.
The map has
Targets are mixed in with the soldiers in that base. Use the VI to identify them.
You have arrived at your destination.
That's digitalis. It's toxic and can also be used as medicine.
Please select a strike point. Support helicopter requested. Support helicopter has arrived.
Prioritizing elimination of enemy threats.
Please select a strike point. Strike requested.
Rockets away.
Strike will commence shortly. Clouds approaching.
In hot. Watch out, boss.
5 targets remaining. Head to the Kugenga mine.
Updated. Outpost captured. Sun will rise.
Target acquired. In hot. Rocket salvo. Rocket salvo. P1 is in hot. Find cover. Rockets away.
Guard post captured. Please select a
This is
strike
P-Quad.
point.
No targets remaining. Ending attack run and we'll stand by at LZ.
Support
That's African peach. The shape of its petals gives it the nickname the pincushion. It's used in local traditional medicine as a pain reliever and tranquilizer.
project has been. Support helicopter has arrived. Please select a strike point.
This is B-Quad. Approaching position.
Support
This is
helicopter has
B-Quad. I
arrived.
have arrived at marker. Cover fire. In hot. Prioritizing elimination of enemy threats. Rocket salvo! Rocket salvo! In hot! Watch out, boss!
Please select a deployment point.
P-Quad is in hot! Find cover!
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
In hot! Watch out, boss!
Analysis complete. Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Target acquired! In hot!
Analysis buddy has infiltration. Map has been updated.
You gotta extract him.
Extraction failed.
P-Quad is in hot! Find cover!
Guard post captured.
This is P-Quad. No targets remaining. Ending attack run and we'll stand by at LZ. This is P-Quad.
Please select
Have
a
arrived
strike
at
point.
LZ. We'll stand by.
Support helicopter has arrived.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Please select a strike point. The map has been updated. Please select a strike point. Please select a deployment point.
This is Pequod.
Buddy
Approaching
has
position.
infiltrated and the map has been updated. Support
This is
helicopter
Pequod.
has
I have
arrived.
arrived at marker. Cover fire. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss.
Support helicopter destroyed.
Cannot maintain altitude. Controls non-responsive. Pequod down. Pequod down.
They shot down the chopper. Already a backup chopper. Call it from your iDroid.
Please select a strike point. Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Snake, talk to me. Snake!
Five of the targets should be at the Kugenga mine. Find them.
Please select a deployment point. Please select a buddy has infiltrated our... The map has been updated. The map has been updated. Please select a strike point. Support helicopter requested.
Begin cover fire. This is Pequod. Approaching position.
Support Please select a strike point. Please select a deployment point.
This is Pequod. Approaching position. Alles geschwellet, das steht hier. Показалось Europäer Helikopter.
Support
This is
helicopter
Pequod.
has
I have
arrived.
arrived at marker. Cover fire. In hot.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Buddy has infiltrated
salvo!
and the
Rocket
map has
salvo!
been updated. Please select a strike point.
Prioritizing elimination of enemy
Strike
threats.
requested.
Rockets away.
Strike will commence shortly. Enemy
You've reached the mine.
detected.
5 targets are being held captive at that outpost. The VI on your iDroid will show you where they are.
Please select a strike point. The map has been updated. Support helicopter has
Pequod. I have
arrived.
arrived at marker. Cover fire. In hot. Rocket salvo. Rocket salvo. Pequod is in hot. Find cover.
You have arrived at your destination.
Target acquired. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss.
You gotta extract him.
Target acquired. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss.
Outpost captured.
Pequod is in hot. Find cover. This is Pequod. No targets remaining. Ending attack run and we'll stand by at LZ.
doesn't look like he can walk.
Arrived.
You're still gonna help him.
Mission info has been updated. Support helicopter. Caution. Rain approaching.
Boss, if even one of those kids die, the mission's a failure. Be careful. You're those kids' only support out there.
Strike point.
You need to give them orders. Lead them to the objective area. But they won't hear you if you're too far away from them. Keep that in mind.
This is B-Quad. Approaching position. This is
Support
B-Quad.
helicopter
I have
has
arrived at
arrived.
marker. Cover fire. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss. B-Quad is in hot. Find cover. Target acquired. In hot.
They won't hear you if you're too far away from them.
In hot. Watch out, boss. P-Quad is in hot. Find cover. In hot. Watch out, boss. Target acquired. In hot.
They won't hear you if you're too far away from them.
This is B-Quad. No targets remaining. Ending attack run and we'll stand by at LZ. This is B-Quad. Have arrived at LZ. We'll stand by.
Support helicopter has arrived. Please select a strike point. Enemy presence detected. Support
This is
helicopter has
B-Quad. I have
arrived.
arrived at marker. Cover fire. In hot. P-Quad is in hot. Find cover. This is B-Quad. No targets remaining. Ending attack run and we'll
They won't
stand
hear
by
you
at
if you're too far away from them.
This is Pequot. Have arrived at LZ. Will stand by.
Support helicopter has arrived. Clouds approaching.
Boss, you're just leaving the target. Put the target on the chopper. All right, target extracted. Target extracted. Anyone else? Good. That's the target extracted.
Gaining altitude. Departing.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Enemy presence detected. The map has been development project has been added.
All right, mission complete, boss. Maybe you'll actually break a sweat next time, huh?
Development project has been added. Please specify a project. Please specify a project.
He's all grown up now. You mean Dee Dee? Yeah. Didn't seem to take that long, did it? You think he's really even a dog?
Hmm? Of course he's a dog. What's wrong with you?
Well, I just mean he looks more like a wolf to me.
That's crazy talking. He's a dog. You hear me? A dog.
So you think he's a dog? Keep freaking out on it. What's important?
Please select a landing zone. Landing zone
Roger.
confirmed.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Gaining altitude.
Hello?
Please select a mission. Unit dispatched. Development complete. Development project has been added. Please specify a project. Please specify a project. Please specify a project. Development project has been added. Please specify a project. Please select a mission.
From the front room of the apartment. What is it? I think I figured out why Zero was so eager to have Prince Lelouch on our side. Tamaki said weakly. What are you talking about? Come in here and look at this. Tamaki urged from the other room. Alright, fine, I'm coming. OHG, I said, walking into the front room. Tamaki had the television on and it was showing the news. What's going on? He asked. He saw the image of a flaming black nightmare decimating its attackers on the television screen. He grabbed the remote and turned the volume up. We are told that the two nightmares seen in this footage are two experimental nightmares known as the Lancelot and the Merlin being the Black Nightmare is also the personal nightmare of the commander of the Britannian fleet and sub-viceroy of Area 11, Prince Lelouch v. Britannia. Oh my god, OHG, I breathed. Prince Lelouch is piloting that thing. Maybe Zero was right, maybe it is better to have him with us instead of against us. Tamaki finally agreed, but that wasn't to say his opinion wouldn't change by tomorrow. After the battle, Lelouch's Pav. Well, that was certainly an exciting test run, wasn't it? Lloyd said in his usual drawl, not bothering to comment on how disheveled Lelouch looked at the moment. He was sweaty from the uncomfortable heat he suffered from inside the cockpit, and the top of his uniform was undone, revealing the white dress shirt underneath. Quelling a mutiny and crushing a vicious terrorist attack, quite exciting indeed. Lloyd went on to say. You're in a rather good mood considering the Merlin got torched, Jeremiah observed while tossing Lelouch a bottle of water. He defiantly looked like he needed it. Lloyd waved it off as the interns working in the engineering hangar removed the charred nightmare from the truck that had carried it from the scene of the battle. Oh, it's nothing a fresh coat of paint won't fix. Personally, I enjoyed the sight of one of my creations bringing such devastation down onto the enemy. He then smirked as if he was deep in thought flaming Harkins. He mumbled, mostly to himself. Lloyd, you know that wouldn't actually work. Cecile reminded with a sideways glance. I can dream, can't I? Lloyd snapped. Lelouch and Suzaku had to resist laughing at the pair as they bickered over the physics of building such a weapon. You know they're already showing the footage from the battle all over the news. Suzaku said, they said you were the one piloting the Merlin. I see the media is being irresponsible as usual. Lelouch sighed. Don't they realize that if the enemy knows that I'm the pilot of the Merlin that they will be gunning for me in future battles? Suzaku, maybe you should break up that argument before Lloyd and Cecile get violent. Yeah, you're probably right, Suzaku said as he left. I think your display of combat ability will serve as a good deterrent. Plus you'll soon have a royal guard to watch your back. Jeremiah cut in. True, but only if we can find suitable pilots. When it comes to earning a spot on a team like that, good just doesn't cut it. If I didn't go through training and tried to go up against Cornelia's Glaston Knights, it'd be suicide. Jeremiah shrugged. Don't sell yourself short now. Alright, I'd probably last all of 5 minutes. Lelouch conceded before his cell phone started ringing. He pulled it out of the pocket he kept it in and answered it. Hello. Yes, I'm fine. Yes, I sure about that. Let me get cleaned up first and then I'll come meet with you. Alright, bye. Lelouch hung up and stuffed the phone back into his pocket. I'm sure you can guess who that was. Why don't you take the rest of the day off or something? I think you could use a break. That's an understatement. Between Cowell's failed attempt of a rebellion and you getting napalmed, I need a drink. If you see Capt. Nu, let her know that I want to see her in my office ladder. Lelouch called as he left. Ashford. What's with the worried faces? They said on the news that Lelouch was unharmed, so we shouldn't worry. Millie said, breaking the silence between the two other students who were still in the council room with her. If somebody told me months ago that Lelouch is capable of that, I would have laughed in their face. Rival said, still in disbelief. The scene was forever burned into the back of his eyes. Millie shrugged. Well, it's in his blood. His mother was once a knight of round. She said absent-mindedly. I didn't know that. Shirley cried. Me either, Rival said, realizing at this moment just how little he really knew about his friend. He had always just accepted that Lelouch and Nunnally were simply orphans without pasts. He never in his wildest dreams imagined they were the prince and princess that had gone missing all those years ago. Oh yeah, they used to call her Marianne the Flash. You guys should really pay more attention in your social studies class. Millie continued. Is there anything else about him we should know? Rivals asked, suddenly feeling a little miffed. She shrugged again. Probably, but nothing I could tell you. You realize it's because of Zero that the other terrorist groups have become emboldened? Cece asked as she sat outside the door of the master bathroom. I'm aware of that, Lelouch called back from the large tub filled with lukewarm water he was currently soaking in. The whole situation is ironic, isn't it? You really are a walking contradiction. I suppose I am. I wonder if the blood of the samurai would have been so eager to attack if they knew that Zero and I are one and the same. It's a good thing Jeremiah was able to react so quickly during the battle. You should really be more careful in the future. You and I have a contract. I can't have you dying. What do you expect? I'm a soldier. I'm going to be in battle every now and then. If you're so worried about my safety, perhaps I should put you on my royal guard. Lelouch said sarcastically. Perhaps you should, she said airily. Her response to his retort grated on his nerves. There was a long pause before he came out of the bathroom, having just redressed himself in a clean uniform. I'll think about it, he said insincerely as he toweled off his dripping hair and then reaching for the discarded cape that was laying on the bed. But right now I have got to talk to Cornelia, he said as he adjusted it over his shoulder. When Lelouch got to Cornelia's office, she dismissed her counsel, including Guilford and Darlton, and had him sit down in a leather chair facing her desk. You used the trains themselves to strike the final winning blow. Pretty clever, Cornelia said with what could only be described as a distant smirk on her face. Don't tell me you were impressed with that old trick, Lelouch said. It's hardly an old trick, and it was your and Kururugi's piloting skills I was more impressed with anyway. It seems you have more of your mother in you than we thought. Lelouch laughed. I have to admit it was one hell of a test run. Cornelia laughed wistfully. I like seeing you prove the others wrong. Lelouch didn't have to ask who exactly these others were. He knew full well she was speaking of their other siblings and possibly a number of high-ranking nobles who had positions in the royal court. They always condemned you as a weakling, but I knew that deep down there was something more, something almost silent until now. Schneisel knew it too, though I think he knew it long before I did. Did you call me here just to flatter me? Lelouch asked cheekily. No, I want to plan an operation so we can eradicate the rest of this terrorist organization. We need to retaliate and fast. So you want me to assist in the operation? Lelouch asked. No, you fought 2 battles today alone between the Purists' uprising and the terrorist attack. You need some time to rest. Besides, I can't expect you to clean up Area 11 by yourself. Lelouch shrugged. The engineering corps needs to do some maintenance work on the Merlin anyway. You just concentrate on putting that guard of yours together, she suggested. Lelouch thought that it was something that was oddly specific to say. As reliable as Gottwald may be, he can't be everywhere at once. As Lelouch left her office, he walked straight past some of the members of her council who were talking amongst themselves. Well, you saw her face when the terrorist hit him with the napalm. I've never seen her panic like that before, he overheard one of them say. Yeah, but that was until he started hitting them with the slash Harkins and then did that spin maneuver. Pure genius, I tell you, the other said. And now she wants to retaliate because of it, the first went on to say. You can't forget she also thinks there's a chance they may be harboring Zero. Lelouch didn't bother to listen into the rest of the conversation. He should have known, of course something like that would set her off. She probably didn't want him to come because she was afraid of him getting hurt. Holding cells. Sora C, you have a visitor, the guard announced harshly. Huel looked up from the floor he sat upon and saw a girl who was no older than 18. Marika. She sighed with a saddened expression on her face. Why did you do it, brother? She asked. Jeremiah betrayed us, he tried to justify. Lord Jeremiah did nothing but faithfully serve his prince as he has sworn to do. Marika interrupted. She couldn't help but notice her brother flinch at her words. He threw everything we worked for away over that foreigner-loving commoner they have the nerve to call royalty. Huel spat bitterly. Thanks to your actions we are no better now, Marika reprimanded as she teared up. Can't you see the seriousness of the situation? What you did could be seen as high treason. You could die for this. They won't kill me. I already made a deal with the authorities by implicating others that were involved in exchange for not getting the death penalty. Huel admitted, albeit a little shamefully. She sniffled quietly. I'm glad that you will be spared. But that still leaves the disgrace our family has fallen into. Huel, I've requested an audience with Prince Lelouch. It's up to me to restore our family's honor. I'm going to ask him for a chance to do whatever it is I must to absolve your sins against the Empire. How am I supposed to react to that? Huel asked resentfully. He knew that despite his disapproval she was a fan of the young chief commander. It was a fact that annoyed him to no end, especially when she and her friend, Lilina, would go on and on about how cute he was while giggling like a couple of schoolgirls. It didn't help matters that Prince Lelouch was steadily gaining a reputation as a notorious womanizer. The little bastard could probably get her to do anything. I don't know. I love you, brother, goodbye, she said stiffly, trying not to cry as she got up and left the cell block. She hadn't heard him whisper her name one last time. Your Highness, Captain New is here to see you, one of his secretaries said, poking her head in the door to his office. He looked up from the report he was currently looking over. Send her in. She seemed a bit nervous, like she didn't know what to expect from this meeting. Lord Jeremiah said you wanted to see me. He offered her a seat in an attempt to get her to relax, but she still seemed tense. Lelouch figured it was because of the transgressions of her colleagues from earlier that day that was getting her out of sorts. You showed loyalty by warning Jeremiah about what the Purists were planning, and as you probably know by now, loyalty is something I reward. He could tell by her reaction that it was not what she was expecting. Your Highness, I'm awarding you your rank of Major back and offering you a spot on my royal guard. You want me on your guard? She didn't really know what to say. Yes, you are after all a rather skilled pilot. And your recent actions tell me that you can be trusted. Jeremiah put in a good word for you as well. So tell me, do you accept the position or should I find someone else to fill the spot? Lelouch asked. No, I mean you don't have to do that. I accept the position. Lelouch smiled. Good answer. Next morning. The footage of you fighting during that terrorist attack is causing quite an uproar here in Pendragon. The media has already dubbed the Merlin as the Black Plague. After seeing you rain down fire on the enemy, I can see why. Schneisel said over the video feed. Lelouch didn't bother acting surprised. It was early. He hadn't the energy for it, is it? I wouldn't have thought people were paying such close attention to me. Believe it or not, people are rather intrigued by you. They have been ever since it was announced that you and Nunnally were still alive. They are quite curious of what you're capable of. In a good way or a bad way? Lelouch asked. Schneisel flashed his icy trademark of a smirk. Well, that really depends on the individual now, doesn't it? I suppose it does. I imagine our brother Cassius is just as bitter towards me as ever. Unfortunately, time has not done much in reshaping his opinion of you. The same goes for a number of the others. Although after your recent performance, a few of them are starting to come around. Schneisel answered. But enough about that. I hear from Cornelia that you are currently putting your royal guard together. He said, changing the subject. You already spoke to her this morning. Yes, she was beginning to prepare a convoy for an operation of hers. So tell me, have you thought of a name for them yet? Schneisel asked. I have decided to call them the Knights of Iran, Lelouch answered. Schneisel raised an eyebrow. The Knights of Iran. The Celtic god of revenge, terror, and war, and the ruler of the underworld of the dead. Lelouch explained. Don't tell me you have gotten rusty with your mythology, O great commissioner of the Camelot project. He teased. Welsh tradition was so much to do with Arthurian legend after all. Perhaps I have. I have half a mind to go back and reread some of those books now. Schneisel laughed. Once the feed was cut off and Schneisel's image disappeared, Lelouch flipped the television back to the morning news, which for this particular network was a generous term for what it really was, little more than a gossip show that just so happened to report the traffic and weather. Yesterday's battle on the Tokyo settlements railways isn't the only thing landing Prince Lelouch in the headlines today. It would seem that the sub-viceroy was recently seen in the medical bay of the government complex getting screened for sexually transmitted diseases. Jeremiah, who lounging in his usual spot, spit out the coffee he had been drinking upon hearing that. The picture of the Merlin being set on fire by the terrorists was still hanging in the corner of the television screen. Gives a whole new meaning to the term burning sensation, doesn't it? The other host of the show quipped, making the first chuckle before they went on. It is speculated that Princess Cornelia is establishing the health of Prince Lelouch because she is considering the advantages of establishing an alliance between the V. Britannia and Lee Britannia branches of the royal family through marriage. Similar feats of intelligence and combative skill is what may have sparked Princess Cornelia's interest in the newly reinstated prince. Are they just making stuff up now? Jeremiah asked. Colin and I are so not even. Lelouch grumbled before taking a bottle of aspirin out of his desk drawer and swallowed 2 of the pills. Jeremiah, I promised that you could kill someone this time, didn't I? Down in the con. They are saying what about me and Lelouch? Cornelia shrieked. It seems the media found out that you made him get tested for venereal diseases. Darlton said, and now they are making wild speculations about your relationship with him. He's my little brother. That's disgusting. Cornelia cried before she took a few calming breaths. We need to move out. We will deal with it after our mission. She declared, have my nightmare prepared for immediate deployment once we get there. I will take them all out myself. As you wish, Your Highness. Ashford. I get so scared for you and Suzaku when the 2 of you have to fight terrorists like that. Especially the way they described it on the news, it sounded terrible. Nunnally said as Lelouch poured her a cup of tea. He had come to visit after his talk with Schneisel. The gossip from earlier put him out of mood to deal with anything work-related. I'm sorry I scared you, Nunnally, he said, handing her the teacup full of warm liquid. Don't apologize, it wasn't your fault. You did what you had to do to stop them from hurting others. I just wish. He took her hands into his. You wish what? I wish the world was a gentler place, she finally said. I'm sure that when the day comes that you can see again that it will be. He said, tell me what Millie has been up to now that she doesn't have me to torture on a daily basis. Nunnally giggled. She seemed a bit preoccupied since yesterday. Like there's something on her mind. Nunnally answered before they were interrupted by Rivals, who walked into the dining room. Hey Nunnally, is Sayoko around? The prez needs. Lelouch, what are you doing here? Rivals said, stopping dead in his tracks. Having tea with Nunnally. Rivals, what do it look like? Seeing Lelouch having a tea party with his little sister was a stark contrast to the fearsome combatant that was all over the news. Lelouch, can I ask you something? He finally asked. Lelouch nodded. Sure, go ahead. Rivals leaned in. Where did you learn to fight like that? Basic training, Lelouch said simply. Rivals shifted awkwardly. Millie said your mom was a knight of round. She was, but that was before I was born. I think she helped train a couple of the current ones though. Lulu, Millie squealed upon coming into the room to see what was taking Rivals so long. I heard some pretty scandalous things about you on the news this morning, she said, not being able to hold in her laughter. Lelouch blushed. Shut up, he grumbled. What were they saying? Rivals asked. Not being a morning person, he always got out of bed at last moment before classes started and never watched television in the morning. Millie leaned in to whisper in his ear. He listened with a blank expression before shouting, what? None of it's true, Lelouch yelled. Hey, where's Lord Jeremiah? You didn't bring him with you this time, Millie asked. What she was really wondering was if Sayoko had the man cornered somewhere. No, I sent him on a mission, Lelouch said darkly, not going into further detail. Blood of the Samurai Mountain Stronghold. Cornelia attacked in her Gloucester from above, giving the terrorists manning the tanks stationed on the mountain slope little time to react. Relics of a forgotten age. I bet they used all the nightmares in their arsenal in the attack yesterday, she said to herself as they fired at her as she came at them, but she easily dodged the onslaught and fired her Harkins at them, making the tanks below explode on impact. When she came upon a landing which led to a tunnel, she contacted Darlton. Darlton in here, correct? Yes, my lady. Shall we accompany you? Not for this level of resistance, besides they set my brother on fire and I'd rather take them all out myself, she hissed as she went down the tunnel leading into a man-made concrete-lined cavern filled with munitions and tracks leading out to tunnels in every direction. Surrender at once, you feeble-minded 11s, she ordered. The remaining guerrillas took up their arms and let out a cry of down with Britannia, firing upon the enemy nightmare in one last desperate act of defiance. This of course did not faze Cornelia in the least bit. It doesn't seem like Zero is here after all. No point in taking them out one by one then, she said to herself as she aimed her assault rifle. Rot like the vermin you are, she cried as she fired upon them, killing every last one. Lelouch got back to the complex about the same time as Cornelia's convoy did, and he was unfortunate enough to run into her. It was a very awkward situation considering what was currently being said about the two of them. Lelouch, you look well, Cornelia said stiffly. Yes, well, you had as much confirmed, didn't you? Lelouch said a little bitterly. Indeed, it seems that I may have misjudged you. You're clearly a victim of unfortunate circumstances. I should have realized as much given the exile and disappearance. Fate seems to have taken an interest in toying with you. Lelouch nodded. True, but it is as His Majesty says, people exist to overcome such hardships. Cornelia noticed his eye twitch when he said this. Yes, then, you should get right on that, she said enthusiastically. Lelouch, wanting to end the awkwardness as soon as possible, agreed. Indeed, I shall go accomplish great things, for Britannia, over there, he said as he hastily left as fast as he could. Someone had requested an audience with him anyway. When he got to his office, he found his next appointment waiting for him. The girl stood up from where she was sitting nervously when he entered the room. He noticed she was in a maroon uniform, identifying her as one of Cornelia's pilots. You requested an audience with me? Lelouch asked. She gave a small bow. Yes, Your Highness. I am Lieutenant Marika Sorasi. Lelouch raised an eyebrow at the sound of her name, Sorasi. You wouldn't be related to that traitor Kuel, would you? Lelouch asked harshly. Marika flinched at the sharp sound of his voice. She nodded hesitantly. My brother. He will not be executed if that's what you are here for. It seems that he cut himself a deal by implicating others that were involved in the incident. She took a deep breath. I am already aware of that. What my brother and his cohorts did the other day was inexcusable. Thanks to his actions, my family has fallen into disgrace. I have no right to ask this of you, but nevertheless I am here to humbly beg you for the opportunity to restore my family's honor. Lelouch's expression did not change. Then just what would you be willing to do in order to redeem your family? A look of determination came upon her face. I will request a transfer to your command and swear my undying loyalty to you if that is what it will take. I am willing to fight and die for you if I must. My knight Jeremiah will be the first to tell you that an oath like that is not something I take lightly. I do not take it lightly either, your highness, she replied. Lelouch paused for a long time as he contemplated the girl's proposal. He recognized her name. He knew her to be one of Cornelia's better pilots. She could have easily been part of her royal guard if the positions had not already been filled. He saw a prime opportunity in this. Very well, I could always use more pilots of your skill. Go ahead and commission the Viceroy for your transfer of command. Once that has been arranged, I will decide what to do with you. Lelouch said coolly. She visibly brightened. Thank you, your highness, you have no idea what this opportunity means to me, she declared before he dismissed her. Knight's Lounge. Guilford stared mournfully into the bottom of his glass. His princess had been utterly humiliated by the media today, and Gottwald, despite his best intentions, was not helping his mood in the least bit. It's really not that bad. This rumor is so outrageous that most people simply would not believe it. Besides, this is just a taste of what my prince has to go through. Such a blasé attitude when it comes to decorum is what keeps getting your prince into trouble in the first place. Guilford grumbled. He may not be as much of a stickler for protocol as your princess may be, but I can tell you that sort of behavior is simply not in his nature. Jeremiah argued. Then how do you explain him keeping a mistress? Guilford replied smartly. He is not interested in her for her carnal attributes, he keeps her around for other purposes. Jeremiah defended. Exclamation mark, 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 exclamation mark. And the name of the Celtic god Iran has many spellings. Some of them are Iran, Iran. For those of you who don't know, Marika and Lilina were a part of Bradley's Valkyrie squadron from R2. Before that they were under Cornelia's command, so they are not OCs. Thank you to Belchard, all that is left unsaid, Worker 72, Animafin 29, Too Stupid, Deathwing, Darkstar Shadowrose, River Sakima, Blademaster 357, Dark Jackal, Letaledent, Griffin Turboclaw, and anyone else I forgot to mention for all the ideas you people have sent me. And to Wolfman 13, Episode 18 of Before Colin killed them with the Gurren during the Second Battle of Tokyo while she was fighting Sir Bradley. Super duper sorry about the Uber delay. 4th of July festivities got me a week behind schedule in the writing process of this chapter. And I seriously lost count of how many times I rewrote it. This chapter really kicked my butt and was one of the hardest to write so far, so enjoy. I do not own Code Geass. Ch.36 Saitama. Pendragon. We are told that the two nightmares seen in this footage are two experimental nightmares known as the Lancelot and the Merlin being the Black Nightmare is also the personal nightmare of the commander of the Britannian fleet and sub-viceroy of Area 11, Prince Lelouch v Britannia. So little Lulu is all grown up and fighting the enemies of the Empire. A woman thought to herself while watching the news footage from Area 11 once again. Perhaps if she petitioned His Majesty she would be allowed to serve the prince temporarily. She was certainly lacking in a current assignment at the moment anyway. She grinned to herself. I just knew that boy was special. As Marianne's son he would have to be. I'm curious as to what we plan to do about the runaway media. Guilford said, starting off yet another meeting. Lelouch knew that the man was rather upset about what they were saying about Cornelia. Jeremiah had told him as much. The two had actually gotten into somewhat of a small disagreement over the subject. The station reporting the story isn't exactly what one would call a respected name in journalism. It's probably all just a quest for ratings. It's not like what they are suggesting is even legal. Intermarrying within the royal family has always been what cousins at most. Darlton said. Besides, they are already facing serious legal ramifications for slandering royal family members. Especially for that burning sensation joke, that was not funny. Lelouch continued through clenched teeth. Despite themselves, a couple of Cornelia's advisors snickered quietly but quickly stopped when Lelouch shot them a warning look. There is still the breach of confidentiality within the medical bay. We can't have the workers there leaking our health concerns to the public, or they'll be saying we have all sorts of illnesses and conditions every time one of us has a checkup. Cornelia said. I already had Jeremiah take care of that. Lelouch interrupted. It turns out the culprit was an orderly that wanted to make some money by selling the story to the media. Naturally, they have been terminated. Now can we please move on to some more important issues? Have there been any reports of terrorist activity within the settlement since the attack a few days ago? Lelouch asked. That's my main concern. Yes, there have been reports of terrorist activities by a group called the Yamato Alliance in the Saitama Ghetto. There is evidence that the residents there are collaborating with these groups. Darlton reported. All right then, we'll need to take them out as soon as possible before they start to become a real threat. It's only a matter of time before they organize themselves like the group that participated in Shinjuku. Lelouch said, the problem is separating them from the civilians in the area. Those civilians, as you call them, are hardly innocent if they harbor the terrorists within the area. Cornelia argued. I will be the judge of that, Viceroy. Lelouch said sharply. I think I may have an idea to get them to make themselves known. Cornelia raised an eyebrow. And just what would that be? She asked. Lelouch smiled. If your enemy is temperamental, seek to irritate them. Lelouch said before ordering, somebody arrange for a press conference. Oh. Did you see Kuhl yesterday? Lilina asked when she saw Marika. Yeah, he's as well as can be expected considering, well, everything. She said a little sadly. I just can't believe he would fly off the handle and do something like that. Lilina sat up from the chair she was lounging on. What are they going to do to him? He escaped the death penalty. I don't know much after that. That's about as much of a reduced sentence as one can hope for. And the prince, did he allow you to speak with him? Lilina asked curiously. Yes, he did actually. He wasn't there when I showed up, so I had to wait in his office for him. So how did it go? I think it went all right. He said to go ahead and get the transfer. You should transfer with me. I don't know, Lilina said hesitantly. Marika pouted. Come on please, I have all the papers right here. She said, showing her friend the file in her hand. Are you sure he won't mind? Lilina asked her friend. The last thing she wanted to do was impose upon Prince Lelouch. Marika nodded. I'm sure. He said it himself. I could always use more pilots of your skill. Marika quoted. Then you're every bit as good as I am. Anything else you like to ask me? Is he that cute in person? Lilina asked with a sly grin. Marika grinned back. Even cuter, believe it or not. You could just get lost in those eyes. Oh. Ashford. So we are postponing the trip to Lake Kawaguchi? Shirley asked. Yes, but only till next weekend. They had to shut down the rail system because of the attack the other day. I was worried it was going to be cancelled. She sighed in relief. I was looking forward to it so much. Millie Ashford does not cancel events. Not even when a certain prince would complain about it being too humiliating. She declared. Shirley's face suddenly fell. Is her ladyship Duchess Yuffie still coming? She asked bitterly. Yes, she is. Shirley, what happened between the two of you to make you dislike her so much? Millie asked. We were talking about Lelouch the other day and I may have said too much because she figured out that I like him. Millie supplied with a grin. Shirley blushed. Yeah, that. Well, I asked her if she minded, and do you know what she said to me? Millie shook her head. No, what? No, why would I? Can you believe that? She doesn't think that I have a chance with Lulu because he's a prince and I'm not good enough for him. She cried. A sympathetic look came upon Millie's face. Oh, Shirley, I'm sure she didn't mean it like that. Then what did she mean by it? Shirley asked irritability. Hey guys, Lelouch is about to make a speech on the news again. Rivals interrupted as he poked his head into the room. The girls dropped their conversation and followed him out where the television was. Lelouch's image was already plastered on the screen as he stared his speech. As of yesterday afternoon, the remnants of the Blood of the Samurai, the terrorist faction responsible for the most recent attack, has been sought out and successfully destroyed. It is important to remember that those who engage in acts of terrorism not only have no honor but are a disgrace to their heritage. They only seek to destroy no matter who gets hurt by the brutality of their actions. The most recent attack is proof of this. It was a craven, cowardly act of violence that targeted not only Britannian civilians but Japanese bystanders as well. Their actions only resulted in the deaths of the perpetrators and their allies. As Viceroy and Sub-Viceroy, my sister, Princess Cornelia, and I intend to systematically exterminate all terrorist factions within Area 11. I wonder if they're going to try and go after Zero. Rival said. He killed their brother after all. Oh. Underground base, Narita. The nerve of that royal brat. Kusakabe roared, saying that we're the ones with no honor. After what the Britannians did to us. And now the Blood of the Samurai have been wiped out. Calm down, Toto ordered before everybody got themselves worked up. Didn't any of you catch it? Catch what? What are you talking about? He called us Japanese, Toto said evenly. There was a stunned pause before Kusakabe spoke up again, a slip of the tongue. What of it? You said it yourself, Toto. He was here before the occupation. It's probably just an old habit. The fact of the matter is he's obviously calling us out. And I for one think it's time to take him up on the offer. There were a number of members that agreed with him. Don't be a fool, Kusakabe. Toto warned. Oh. Hello, Your Highness. Lloyd called from the other end of the nightmare hangar when Lelouch entered. We caught your little anti-terrorism speech on the television. Those were some pretty strong words. If I were you, I'd watch my back. There are a lot of groups out there that won't take kindly to that. Lloyd chided. I think that was the point, Asplund. Jeremiah said from behind him. So this where you've been all day? I was wondering where you disappeared to. Lelouch said. Well, I have to do something while you're caught up in meetings, don't I? Jeremiah asked sarcastically, but it was all in good fun. Lelouch rolled his eyes. I wanted to tell you that Kewell's sister Marika sought out an audience with me yesterday. Jeremiah turned his attention away from the new nightmares being unpacked from shipment. What did she want? She wants to transfer to my command and serve me. I told her that I would allow it. I'm thinking of putting her on the team. Are you sure that's wise? Jeremiah asked, still a little on edge about the whole situation. She basically swore her loyalty to me. That's what really counts, isn't it? I'll leave holding her to it up to you. So what exactly is all this? Lelouch asked, observing the load of new nightmares. More nightmares. Your brother Prince Schneisel sent them over for your guard to use. Lloyd interrupted to explain. Personal guards needed something with a little more firepower than standard Sutherlands. Gloucesters then? Lelouch asked the engineer. Lloyd flashed his signature grin. Exactly. As you know, they have better armor and superior mobility compared to Sutherlands. And of course they have been painted black. Everything associated with me has to be black, doesn't it? Lelouch groaned upon getting a better look at them. All the better to match the Merlin, Lloyd said cheekily. Jeremiah shrugged in agreement. You have to admit it does suit you. Speaking of the Merlin, how is the maintenance work coming on it? Lelouch asked. It will be as good as new in a few days, Lloyd said. Commander, a voice called. He turned and saw Cornelia standing in the entrance to the hangar. I would like to speak with you about Saitama in my office. Alright, you guys just keep doing what you're doing down here, Jeremiah. When I get done with Cornelia, I'll be heading back to my office so you know where to find me. Lelouch said as he left the hangar to follow his sister to her private office. What exactly is it about Saitama that we have to speak in private? Lelouch asked when they got there. We could have easily had this conversation in front of your men, but I'd rather skip the formalities for now, she explained as she sat in the plush leather chair behind her desk. So what is it that you wanted to say? I'm taking over this operation, she said curtly. What? He asked, thoroughly annoyed by her announcement. What you said earlier about seeking to irritate the enemy got me thinking, and I came up with a plan to eradicate them and catch Zero at the same time, she explained. And just how would we do that? We'll create a situation similar to Shinjuku. she said coolly, and then we will broadcast the time and place the operation starts. Zero has a flair for the dramatic he won't be able to resist. Cornelia, Shinjuku was a bloodbath, Lelouch argued. Like I said before, Lelouch, there is evidence that they are harboring these terrorist groups within the ghetto. That is treason against a suzerain state. No, Lelouch said calmly. She looked at him in disbelief. No, what do you mean no? This is my operation and I will see it through, Cornelia, he said stiffly, remembering to keep his tone respectful. She got up from her desk chair and came close to him. You have little choice in the matter. You can't shut me out of the military like you did to Clovis Lelouch. I am your equal in rank and politically you are my subordinate. So when I say I'm taking over an operation, that means I'm taking over an operation, is that understood? She said harshly before her eyes and voice softened and she stroked his cheek with a gloved hand. You're my little brother, and I cannot bear to lose you again. His eye twitched just slightly. So that's it. What happened a few days ago has gotten you so nervous about me being on the battlefield you're afraid I'm going to be maimed or killed. Well, you have only just officially named a second person for your guard. That's not nearly enough fortification. I also want Zero. He killed Clovis and probably would have killed you if not for your knight. Lelouch felt a guilty twinge in the pit of his stomach that was threatening to grow into the nausea he had felt before when he realized that he had Clovis's blood on his hands. When Lelouch got back to his own office, he found Jeremiah there waiting for him. What did Princess Cornelia want? He asked. Lelouch took a deep breath. She has taken over the operation for Saitama. Why would she do that? Jeremiah asked. She wants Zero and is going to try to create a situation like in Shinjuku to coax him. Lelouch explained. Damn it, we haven't quite earned the trust of resistance members who are just beginning to follow Zero, and things could escalate and end up being another massacre. That is something we cannot afford. There was a very long pause as Lelouch thought the situation over before he spoke again. I think I may have an idea. If we can pull it off, it just might help build Zero's ranks as well. The next day, the phone next to Tamaki's bed rang, waking the hangover man up. He blindly felt around the rickety end table for the thing making the offending noise. He eventually found it and picked it up off the receiver. Low, he said, semi-unconscious. Tamaki, it's me. Are you hungover again? The voice on the other end said. OHGI, you know better than to call me this early. He grumbled. OHGI sighed into the phone. Tamaki, it's past noon. I told you not to drink so much last night. That bit of information made him open his eyes and look to the clock. It was indeed past noon. Congratulations, you can tell the time, he said groggily. Well, seeing as though you're not even up yet, I take it that means you haven't noticed. Noticed what? Look out your window, OHGI instructed. Tamaki opened his blinds and let out a loud yelp of pain. Tamaki, are you all right? What happened? It's really bright out, he said, rubbing his eyes. Just look out the window, you idiot, OHGI said, finally getting frustrated. Now that his eyes had adjusted, he could follow the instruction OHGI had given him. There was a large crowd out today, a significantly large crowd. What's with all the people? I don't know. I thought it was just the morning rush earlier today, but more and more of them just keep coming. Yoshida says they're all over his neighborhood too. I wonder what's going on. Maybe Colin knows, Tamaki said, lying back down to make the room stop spinning. No, I spoke to her already. She says there's nothing out of the ordinary going on near Stadfeld Manor. What are you reading? Jeremiah asked. You're not normally that enthralled with the usual reports. Lelouch tore his eyes away from the papers he was studying. Just a project of Lloyd's that was recently scrapped. It's a failed mass production prototype of the Lancelot called the Lancelot Club. Jeremiah's interest was immediately perked when he heard the words mass production prototype. Why did they scrap it? It was built around a Sutherland's frame, so there were some major mobility problems, and the funding for it fell through before they could go any further with it. Here, take a look at it, Lelouch said, handing the schematics to his knight before there was a knock on the door. Enter, Lelouch called, and two girls came in through the door. I see that your transfer went through, Lelouch said as Marika entered his office. And you are? He asked upon seeing another girl with long blonde hair standing next to her. She bowed her head as she introduced herself. Lieutenant Lilina Vergamen, Your Highness. I was told you were looking for pilots of exceptional skill. Lelouch smiled. That I am. Both girls squealed inside their heads. Oh god, that smile. I'll tell you what, I'll give you both a trial run sometime after Cornelia's operation in Saitama and we will see what happens from there. Does that sound good? They looked at each other before saying, yes, Your Highness, in unison. Oh. Day of the operation. Understood, the pilot standing in front of Lelouch said, entranced before going about his business once more. Soon after, the young commander was nearly startled when he heard Cornelia's voice. There you are. What are you doing down here? Cornelia asked as the rest convoy prepared to head out. Merely inspecting the troops before we head out. I can do that much, can't I? Lelouch asked. She sighed. Look, I know that you are a little upset about me taking this operation from you, but this plan I have. Do you really want to put yourself out there like this? Lelouch interrupted. If I really believed Zero would make it far enough to actually harm me, I wouldn't be bringing you along now, would I? She asked before they headed towards the G1. As the convoy moved through the settlement, he remembered back to the conversation he had with Jeremiah days before. Ever since I reacquainted myself with Cornelia, it's not too hard to predict what sort of moves she'll make. I'm going to give you instructions on how to handle Cornelia's tactics. You can count me. Lelouch smiled. I know I can. Now listen carefully. Darlton's voice brought him back to the present. The Saitama ghetto is now completely surrounded. The Yamato Alliance's hideout is somewhere in here, and as we already know, half the people in this community are cooperating with them. So if we proceed now, what will be the effect on overall production? Cornelia asked. Primary sector output should decrease by 0.2 present. Darlton answered. Within expectations, you mean? Very well. She turned to her brother, Sub-Viceroy. Yes. You and your knight Gottwald just happened to get caught up in Shinjuku, right? She asked. He breathed a slightly irritated sigh. You know we did, Viceroy. Do you think the conditions are similar? She asked him. Remarkably so, he responded, adjusting his radio to his ear. HITV Newsroom. Military authorities report that they have surrounded the Saitama Ghetto, a known hiding place for terrorists. Viceroy Cornelia is heading the operation and entry into that area is restricted. The news anchor reported, it appears that a full-scale assault will be launched in 2 hours. Consequently, power will be shut off for the time being in the following areas. Kawago, Kawaguchi. News is one thing, but why are they reporting the starting time? A stage director asked. Because they're trying to provoke Zero. Diathard answered. If Zero is the overconfident type, one predict he'll come here too and try kill me. Viceroy, you'd risk your own life like this? One of the officers asked, startled. What you fail to understand is that war is a struggle between pride and life. Cornelia said. If the Viceroy's plan does work, Zero won't make it this far. The fact that I am here with you is proof that the Viceroy...
Buddy has infiltrated and the map has been updated. Analysis complete. Analysis complete.
You gotta extract him. Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. He's coming too. Roger that.
Marker placed. Please select a strike point. Strike requested. Strike will commence shortly. You have arrived at your destination. Outpost captured.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. You gotta extract him.
Analysis complete.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Analysis complete. Analysis complete.
He's coming too. Roger that. subject on board. Leave the rest to us. You gotta extract him.
Marker placed.
They went about their evening as if nothing had happened. That was easy, Jeremiah commented. Come on, he said, it was this way. Lelouch said, heading in the direction the man had pointed them in, not wanting to waste any more time. They eventually found the right warehouse and crept inside behind some crates so the inhabitants wouldn't notice them. There was a rustling sound and the insurgents looked up. Who's there? The leader asked, pointing a rifle in the general direction of the sound before the lights went out. When they came back on, they were face to face with Zero himself. There was a chorus of disbelieving gasps before he began to speak. I assume you have all heard about the Shinjuku incident. The Britannians are planning an attack on Saitama in a few days. If you want any chance of surviving, you will follow my instructions. Lelouch said. What do we have to do? The leader asked under Lelouch's influence. Bring me detailed maps of Saitama, including one of the underground tunnels. Sure thing, the leader of the group said before he went and dug through some things before unfolding the maps over the table in the middle of the room. The first thing you need to do is discreetly evacuate the area into the neighboring ghettos using the underground tunnels. Once that has been organized, you will put explosives in the abandoned office buildings in a hexagonal pattern around this area. Zero said, pointing a spot on the map. On the day of the battle after the initial sweep, you will find a group of Sutherlands waiting for you here, he said, pointing to another spot that was nearby where they were. After that, I will contact you with further instructions. Exclamation mark, 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 exclamation mark. And anyone who can guess who the woman at the beginning of the chapter was gets a mental cookie. Extra special kudos to Velshard and a big thank you to all that is left unsaid and Darkstar Shadows. I am going on a mini vacation for a few days around the 24th, so there may be a delay with the next chapter as well. It all depends if I end up beating my brains out over it like I did with this one. Remember guys, story ideas are always appreciated. It helps keep the writer's block at bay, hint. And Tai's I am back, laughing face, did you miss me? So I was listening to Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen in my car and I realized something. It kind of fits with the whole anime, doesn't it? I mean, if you really listen to the lyrics anyway, just thought I'd share that little discovery with you all. I think my brain got lazy while on vacation because this chapter was way more difficult to write than it really should have been. So much so that I'm kind of mad at myself for making you wait so long for this one. I do not own Code Geass. CH 37 even. There was a knock on the door to Lelouch's office. Enter, he called out, and as the door opened he saw Marika in the doorway. You wanted to see me? She asked nervously. He got up from behind his desk and came towards her. Yes Marika, are you ready for your test run? Lelouch asked with a hunger in his eyes. She suddenly felt very vulnerable under his dark gaze. Your Highness. Suddenly his lips captured her own. When his tongue entered her mouth, she pushed him away without thinking. What? I thought you wanted to restore your family's honor by serving me.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Side ops list updated. Please select a mission. Please select a landing zone. Deploying.
Cornelia sighed heavily and covered her face with her hand. Look, I know you're a victim of circumstance when it comes to the media, but I cannot ignore what I've seen with my own eyes and... Lelouch pinched the bridge of his nose before he cut her off. Cornelia, I assure you I am merely making use of the pilots that I have available to me. Suddenly he got an idea that would probably get Cornelia off his back. I think I know something that will make you feel better. How about you have 2 or 3 of your Glaston Knights take on some of my Iran candidates, that way I can test their capabilities and you can relax and watch a good nightmare spar, get your mind off of yesterday. She looked at him for a moment, considering his suggestion. Well, it will get my mind off of things if anything, she mused. After breakfast, Lelouch went back to his apartments for a brief chat with CC and then headed down to his office, running into Suzaku along the way. Morning, Suzaku, Lelouch greeted as he continued walking. Good morning, Commander, Suzaku replied, mindful of his surroundings as he quickly caught up with his friend. I heard Zero showed up in Saitama. Lelouch slowed his pace. He did, right before he buried Cornelia's troops under 300 tons of rubble. I take it he got away then, Suzaku said solemnly. Lelouch nodded. I'm afraid so. If we followed after him, we could have just been walking into another trap. Not something Cornelia or I were willing to do, considering the heavy losses we just suffered. So much senseless killing, Suzaku said, shaking his head. Those soldiers knew the risks and chose to serve Britannia anyway. They weren't hapless civilians, they knew what they were doing. Lelouch said sternly before asking, "What are you doing here today anyway? Shouldn't you be at school?" "I thought I could help with the ongoing search and rescue from yesterday. I just needed your approval," Suzaku said honestly. "It's being taken care of, Suzaku. Go to school." "But there still could be people trapped under all the rubble," Suzaku argued. Lelouch sighed. "That's why the search and rescue is still ongoing," he said as they got to the door of his office. "For future reference, you shouldn't argue with your superiors." Suzaku looked a little guilty at that and Lelouch smiled. "I'm going to let that one slide. I'll tell you what, how about I drop by later and we can both visit with Nunnally or something?" "She'd probably like that." Suzaku relented and then sighed. "I'll go if I must, Your Highness." "Good, now you should probably get going. The last thing I need is you fee on my case about keeping you from school." "Alright, I'll see you later, I guess," Suzaku said as he turned to go back to his quarters and change into his Ashford uniform and collect his school things. Lelouch finally entered his office and of course found Jeremiah waiting for him while drinking the usual cup of morning coffee. "How is Her Highness this morning?" Jeremiah asked in a tone that suggested that he was only asking because it was the polite thing to do. "Cornelia seems to be keeping it together. That's not too much of a surprise, I suppose, considering her reputation. She is one tough woman after all," Lelouch said as he locked the door behind him. "You did very well, by the way," he said to Jeremiah. Jeremiah shrugged. "I simply handled her moves as you instructed me to." Well, it wasn't too hard to predict what she would do after all. After I had been able to see the maps the Yamato Alliance had shown me as Zero, I was able to use the knowledge that I gained from them of the local terrain to predict Cornelia's moves practically down to a T. "There is nothing like the home field advantage," Jeremiah said. "No, there is not," Lelouch agreed. Oh. Ashford. "So I was thinking," Millie started. "I don't like the sound of that," Rivals joked. "Quiet you," she snapped back. "Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted, I was thinking of having a sort of slumber party here in the clubhouse, you know, to make up for having to postpone the trip to the lake," she suggested. "That's a great idea," Shirley said enthusiastically. "Like 90s and pillow fights." "Yeah, that is a great idea," Rivals agreed with a big grin. On account of the pure images dancing in his head, it was almost enough to give him a nosebleed this early in the morning. Millie bonked him on the head with a rolled-up piece of paper to snap him out of it. Yuffie's immaculately pale skin tinted pink and she made an embarrassed squeaking sound in her throat. "Whoever said you were invited? No boys allowed," Shirley cried, blushing furiously. "A guy can dream, can't he?" Rivals asked weakly. "Fantasize is more like it," Colin accused. Rivals groaned. "All you girls are against me. I wish Lelouch didn't have to leave school." "Where's Suzaku at? I need another guy here to back me up." "He just called the main office actually, said he was running late. Something about having to speak with his superiors or something," Millie explained. "Oh good, I was starting to worry that maybe Lelouch was working him too hard," Yuffie said before the bell rang and they had to all rush off to their first period classes. What is she doing down here?" Cornelia asked, pointing at CC when she saw her brother and his knight approach. She was getting hoisted into a Gloucester that Lelouch had provided for her. "What, you though she was just some concubine? What do you take me for, some sex pervert?" Lelouch asked defensively, crossing his arms and turning his back to his sister. "Is that the woman he's been hiding in his apartments?" Valletta whispered to Jeremiah as their prince spoke with the viceroy. "Please don't ask me that," Jeremiah said, not really knowing what else to say on the subject. Valletta had a looking of knowing on her face and nodded to herself as if she had just been told so juicy piece of gossip. She usually wasn't one for such things, but she was a woman after all. Once everybody had warmed up, the spar commenced. All three of the females put up a very good fight, much to the chagrin of the three Darlton brothers who were going up against them. Marika and Lilina, Lelouch noticed, worked very well together as a team. While CC preferred to hang back waiting for an opening, the other two would inadvertently create to go straight in for the kill, or rather stun in this case since it was only a friendly spar. As you can see, just like everyone else in my employ, she's not just for aesthetic appeal. Lelouch said smugly as she disabled Claudio's, or perhaps maybe it was Bart's Gloucester. Lelouch couldn't really tell who was in which nightmare. When it was done, Cece exited her cockpit and leisurely strolled over to Lelouch, waggling her hips in a seductive manner. When she reached him, she leaned in close to him and in a silky voice whispered, "You owe me a pizza." The others who were present except for Jeremiah, who was trying his best to repress a snicker, were all gawking at him as Cece walked off. His once smug expression he had been wearing not but a moment ago had quickly turned to one of complete irritation because of the little show she had just put on. The whole point of having her come down and fight had been completely tossed out the window. Despite himself, Lelouch ended up being so irked by Cece's behavior that he found himself ranting by the time he got back to his office. That woman can be so infuriating sometimes. She knows that my personal reputation has been taking a beating from the media and she still behaves like that in front of everybody. Your Highness, if I can give you some feminine insight, Valletta offered. Speak, Lelouch indifferently ordered. Perhaps she acted as such because she may be upset with you for some reason. Upset with me? Lelouch asked, really more to himself than to his two official knights of Iran who were standing before him. Forgive me if this is too personal, my lord, but could there have been something you did or maybe didn't do that would have upset her? She asked abstractly. Lelouch paused in thought before muttering, "That must be it," to himself, and then started to leave. My lord, where are you going? Valletta called as he got halfway down the hallway. I have a pizza to bake. And have Sorasi and Vergaman come to my office later. Lelouch called back. She looked to Jeremiah in confusion as if to ask what the prince really meant by that. Jeremiah could only shrug in response. He likes to cook. He offered. She couldn't help but wonder if the prince had always been this strange. After a few hours of laboring in the kitchens, Lelouch returned to his apartments with a pizza in hand. One pizza made from scratch by me as we agreed on. You wouldn't believe the strange looks I got from the kitchen staff while I was down there making this. Lelouch said as he presented her with her prize for her cooperation with the Nightmare Spa earlier. She dug in with reckless abandon. I take it you like it then? He asked. She kept her mouth closed for a moment as she savored the flavors of the handmade delight. I have to be honest, this may be the best thing I ever tasted, she said in between bites. Hey Cece, Lelouch said, grabbing a slice for himself. MMUPH. She grunted as she shoved another piece in her mouth. I never thanked you for playing Zero for me, did I? He asked. You said you'd get me some new clothes, you never did. She pointed out. He gaped at her for a moment, he just couldn't believe it. That's it, that's what you're mad about. If you don't keep your little promises to me, how can I expect you to fulfill your end of the contract? She asked coldly. I've been meaning to ask, what exactly are the terms of our contract? Lelouch asked. She didn't answer. B just kept eating the homemade treat in front of her. Are you going to answer me or not? He asked. You needn't concern yourself with that for now, she finally responded, and Lelouch decided to give it up as a bad job. I appreciate the thanks though, it wasn't fun having to run through the sewers to escape yesterday. He finished eating the slice he managed to steal away. Listen, I need to get back down to my office. Can I trust you to behave? Well, you did make me pizza, she said boredly. He heaved a sigh of semi-relief. Thank you, and I'll remedy the clothing situation as soon as I can. All right. As expected, when Lelouch returned to his office, it only took a few minutes when he was informed by his secretarial staff that the girls were here to speak with him and he had them lead them in. I'm sure that by now you both are wondering why I had put you through all of that instead of simply looking at your records and assigning you to a team when you transferred command. Both the girls standing in front of his desk nodded. The truth is that by both of your reputations I had already known you to be exceptional pilots. But in order to make my decision I need to see for myself, and your display of skill this morning did not disappoint. That means a lot coming from the pilot of the Merlin, Your Highness. Lilina said, and Marika nodded in agreement. Lelouch continued, what I called you here for is that I want to offer the both of you positions on my royal guard. Do you accept? There was a moment of silence before the serious atmosphere of the conversation was shattered when both girls excitedly squealed their thank yous for the honor he had just bestowed upon them. Needless to say, he was a little caught off guard by their reaction. I'll take that as a yes then, he asked, and they hugged him simultaneously in response. As they giddily exited his office, Lelouch briefly wondered if all women were this crazy or if it was just girls around his age. Valletta and Cecile were older women and they never acted this way around him, and neither did Sayoko for that matter. Later at Ashford. Why did you want us to accompany you, Your Highness? Marika asked as she and Lilina followed their prince through the school grounds. Jeremiah usually accompanies me, but there is an important matter I needed him to take care of. There is also somebody very important to me that I want you both to meet. Since you are now part of my guard, I think it important that you become familiar with them. Lelouch explained. May I ask who this person is, my lord? Lilina asked curiously. My sister Nunnally, he said simply as they made their way past the guards he had stationed at entrances of the East Wing and inside the campus clubhouse. And just so you know, you don't have to so formal around me, at least not while we're here anyway. Also, my sister Euphemia doesn't want people to know she's a princess just yet. So if you could just treat her like a normal student and keep it on the down low, it would be greatly appreciated. You can count on us, Marika said as she and Lilina gave a thumbs up. When they entered the dining room, they finally set eyes on Princess Nunnally. The girl looked much smaller and delicate than they had expected, and sitting at the table next to her was an 11 who was folding what looked to be little paper animals with her. It was an odd sight to them to behold. Hello, Nunnally, their prince said cheerfully. Lelouch, I was starting to think you wouldn't show, Suzaku said. It's been a long day is all. I want to introduce you to some of my new guard members. Lelouch said as he waved Marika and Lilina over. Nunnally, this is Lieutenant Marika Sorasi and Lieutenant Lilina Vergaman. Nice to meet you both, the little princess said as she offered her hand for them to shake. I'm sure you both have seen Major Kurirugi here around the base at some point. Lelouch continued. We haven't actually, Lilina said. Wait, you're a major. Suzaku laughed. Yeah, you can just call me Suzaku though. Suzaku is on Special Corp with me. He's the pilot of the Lancelot. Lelouch explained, and the Japanese boy became that much more interesting to them. Suzaku, Nunnally, where are you? We need to start making arrangements for the cat festival. Millie called in a sing-song voice as she entered the room. Oh, hi Lulu, I didn't know you were coming today, and who are these two gorgeous ladies? She asked, pointing at Lilina and Marika. Friends of yours, she leered at Lelouch. They are the new members of my guard, Millie. Lelouch said plainly. She trotted to where they were standing. I'm Millie Ashford, Student Council President. Lieutenant Marika Sorasi. Lieutenant Lilina Vergaman. They both introduced themselves and exchanged handshakes with the blonde student. What's this about a cat festival? Lilina asked. It's to welcome the new Student Council pet Arthur, Nunnally said. You're throwing a festival for a cat? Lelouch asked. Millie nodded, looking rather proud of herself, and Lelouch shook his head. Why am I not surprised? Do you guys have a lot of festivals here? Marika asked. Oh yes, it's too bad Lelouch had to drop out of school because he used to love the festivals. Millie said with an upward inflection. Lelouch rolled his eyes, but Millie ignored him. Especially whenever he got a chance to dress up, she teased. You made me wear those stupid costumes, Lelouch shouted. Marika and Lilina were a little astounded by the whole conversation. They never imagined the prince being so candid. Millie laughed. All right, that's enough fun for now. We have a student council meeting to start. Suzaku, could you be a dear and help Nunnally? She asked, grabbing the other two bewildered girls by their wrists and dragging them along. I love having fresh blood in on meetings, she said cheerfully. Come on, it's this way. Lelouch took a moment for himself as they left the room. Millie's acting stranger than usual. He thought to himself, I wonder what's going on. What was all the yelling? He heard Shirley's voice say as she came through the door, trailed by Colin and Yuffie, who were apparently on their way to the meeting. Oh, Millie's just being Millie is all, Lelouch said. Hello Lulu, how's Cornelia doing? She's not too terribly mad about Saitama, is she? Yuffie asked. I had Suzaku tell me about it. Don't worry about her, she's a 10-year veteran. She can handle it, he reassured. Still, it must have been pretty humiliating for the both of you, Colin said with a smug undertone. Lelouch shrugged. It was Cornelia's operation, not mine. I didn't really do anything officially. But you're right about the humiliating part. It's almost as if Zero knew what she was planning. Callan's eyes widened for a brief second. He didn't, she thought. Thankfully, the other two girls didn't pick up on the undertones of the conversation. Speaking of Princess Cornelia, Shirley started in a small voice, if you don't mind my asking. The things they've been saying on the news about the two of you isn't true, is it? Of course not, Lelouch said, a little disgusted to even have to be reminded of that whole mess. The media misconstrues things to a gorse level just to get a story. You shouldn't believe their wild speculations. Shirley felt like breathing a sigh of relief until Yuffie started to giggle. Remember when we were little and Nunnally and I fought over who would get to marry you? Now it's almost like Cornelia is making her claim. For some reason the memory made Lelouch laugh. Yeah, I remember that. Shirley's face fell when she heard that. The student council meeting is going to start. We should get moving or we'll be late, she said as she began to walk off. Shirley, is there something wrong? Yuffie asked with genuine concern and began to follow her out into the hallway. Shirley, you're engaged to your own sister now, Colin remarked smartly. I wonder what poor young thing will fall prey to the venomous claws of the Casanova of Britannia next. Might I remind you that you, Colin, were in fact the first to quite literally fall prey to me. You are after all the only woman to know my embrace. She began to sputter angrily at his words. To think that if I had not denounced those rumors of our engagement none of this would have happened, he said wistfully, and Callan's angry sputtering worsened. Just so you know, we're not even. What do you mean we're not even? You can just call it even and then change your mind, she argued. Well, we were even, but that was before Cornelia dragged me the medical bay to get tested after she caught you straddling me in the hallway when you fell on top of me. Colin started to laugh. Wait, that part was true. Now's your chance. Lelouch thought. You think that's funny, huh? He asked as he pulled out his cell phone and pressed a number on his speed dial. Well, let's see how funny you think this is then. Hello, is this HITV? The muffled voice on the other end sounded as if it responded affirmatively. Colin paled. What are you doing? She whispered fiercely. He ignored her. Yes, this is Lelouch v. Britannia. Listen, I'm calling because I'd like to issue a statement that I am in fact engaged to Miss Colin Statfeld. She tried to grab the phone from him, but he turned his back on her, keeping the phone out of her reach. The reason I denounced it earlier is because I didn't want my beloved to suffer the excessive attention and the media focus given her medical condition and general shyness. She tried to grab the phone from him again and he evaded her once more before continuing in a mournful tone. I had hoped that she would at least have a normal adolescence. The muffled voice on the other end seemed to be encouraging him to go on. Well, the constant engagement rumors about me have only brought my intended more pain despite her courageous efforts to hide it. And I wish to put the rumors to rest, if only for her sake, if nothing else. By now Colin was completely horrified by what he was saying, and there was some more muffled speaking from the other end. Well, of course this isn't a hoax. Yes, this is indeed Prince Lelouch. Well, if I weren't, I and my family's fate would be as bad as anyone who openly spurns the attentions of the royal family. What's that? Yes, of course. He then handed the phone to Colin and smirked. The press would like a statement from you as well, darling. Colin numbly took the phone from him and put it to her ear. Yes. Now you're even, a familiar voice said. For a second she thought that maybe it was Zero, but she cleared her head of that thought immediately. Zero wouldn't agree to do something so stupid. She blanched when she looked at the screen of the cell phone because in bold letters the name Jeremiah stared back at her. My apologies, Miss Statfeld, but I did swear an oath of loyalty to his high. She didn't let him finish. She just snapped the phone closed and violently threw it at Lelouch, who narrowly dodged it. Oh, you are a laugh riot. I should have known it was your night or something. Why on earth would you have a news station on speed dial? She said sarcastically as he picked up his phone and pocketed it. OG's apartment, early evening. There was a knock on the front door and OHGI and Tamaki looked at each other. They hadn't been expecting anyone else tonight. Nonetheless, OHGI got up and answered it. Colin, what are you doing here? He asked upon opening the door and seeing his de-iced friend's little sister enter the crumbling apartment. I didn't feel like going home and having to deal with my stepmother after enduring a very eventful student council meeting, she explained. Oh, well, I do have to admit it's nice to see you so active with school and everything after Naoto's death. OHGI said. I'm not being active. I'm edgy from being harassed by a psycho prince with a god complex. I simply haven't had time to grieve because of that jerk, Colin snapped. The two older men looked startled at her reaction and she took a deep breath. Sorry about that. So what are you guys up to? She asked as she made herself comfortable on the couch. Tamaki has been trying to convince me to go out to the bars with him tonight, but I keep telling him that the weekend is right around the corner. Well, what about you, Colin? Any plans tonight? Tamaki asked. Well, she's defiantly not going to go to a bar with you if that's what you're asking. OHG, I jumped in. Colin waved them off. There's this sleepover thing at school for some of the girls. I don't think I'm going to go though, it seems kind of stupid. She said. Well, I think it would be a good idea for you to go. Naoto would want you to socialize like a normal teenager. OHG, I reasoned. Colin gave in at the mention of her dearly departed brother. Fine, I'll go, but only because you say so. I better go home and pack an overnight bag or something. I'll see you guys some other time. Every week she's over here complaining about him. OHG, I said as Colin left. Yeah, I have half a mind to do something about it. Tamaki proclaimed, trying to sound tough. Needless to say, it got him a skeptical look for his friend, and he shuffled his feet a bit. If you know that Gottwald guy wasn't always hovering over him, that is. You think that? No, never mind. OHG, I started but trailed off. What? Well, do you think there's a possibility that maybe he's keeping her upset with him intentionally? Why would he do that? Tamaki asked. Don't you remember? She said that right after Naoto died he went over to her house to offer his sympathy and even gave their mother money for a memorial. Do you think there's a possibility that he's just trying to distract her by keeping her mad at him so she doesn't collapse into grief or something? Or, he's a spoiled Britannian punk that likes harass innocent Japanese girls. Tamaki said. Exclamation mark, 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 exclamation mark. And long time to wait for a filler chapter 1. No. Like I said, even I'm mad at myself for making you wait this long. I hope you enjoy.
His palms went clammy as his mind immediately jumped to the obvious conclusion. But no, it wasn't Zoe. The ghost had long hair, while his sister had always kept hers short. Zoe had been unusually tall for a girl, but the ghost had a petite figure. Mattis frowned at Lee and followed his gaze upward. Part of him had been expecting the mages of Primhaven to have some sort of secret skill for mimicking his own ability and sensing spooks. But if such a thing was possible, it wasn't an extension of the lead instructor's talents. "What is it?" asked Mattis. "Did you see something on the wall?" Lee opened his mouth, but before he could answer, a girlish giggle came from above, followed by a large clump of snow being dislodged. Mattis was quick enough to get partially out of the way, but some of the snow still struck her on the shoulder. The giggles turned into a full, rolling laugh, high-pitched like a beautiful bell. Lee couldn't resist letting out a chuckle of his own as he glanced up at the petite ghost and saw the way she was grinning and leaning over the wall's lip. "Do you find the falling snow amusing?" asked Mattis. Her tone was challenging, but not sharp or incisive. Lee shrugged and tried to ignore the awkwardness left in the wake of the moment as Mattis brushed the snow out of her hood. Luckily, he didn't have to endure it for long. A group of 13 people slowly began making their way out of Gillum and up the gravel path toward Primhaven. They were all more appropriately dressed for the weather than he was, and it seemed as though at least some of them knew each other already. There was another aspect about them that stood out to Lee, as someone who'd spent most of his adult life reading the posture and body language of both people and ghosts. They all looked resolved, almost as though they were heading into battle and were each wearing their guarded emotions in their stances. A tall man on the far left of the group walked with an indignant air about him, chest puffed out, chin held high. A shorter teenager had his hands in his pockets, shoulders slumped, despair visible in the way his gaze stayed locked onto the snow in front of him. Most of them were around Lee's age, but there were a few outliers. A plump woman in a heavy white winter coat looked to be in her early 30s, and there was a boy who couldn't have been older than 12 or 13 based on his body proportions. As the group closed the last few feet, a cute girl with strands of auburn hair poking out of her pink coat came to stand next to Lee. He gave her a nod, and she returned a smile. "Did you just arrive?" she whispered. "I haven't seen you in town."
"Yeah," said Lee. "Very last minute. Lee Amaranth."
"Eliza Willis," said the girl. They didn't have time to exchange more than their names, as lead instructor Mattis was already clearing her throat and gesturing for silence. Two of the new arrivals, apparently also instructors rather than students, had joined her on either side.
"Welcome to the Primhaven University of Arcane Arts and Magical Sciences," said Mattis. "As I'm sure many of you already know, Primhaven has served as an alternative academic institution for magically gifted students outside of the traditional education loop. I see no need to beat around the bush. You're all here because you're either too old, have special needs, behavioral concerns, or various other mitigating factors."
Mattis slowly let her gaze drift across the group. Lee found it extremely hard to hold eye contact with her. He opted to look back up at the wall instead, searching for the pretty ghost he'd seen before, but not finding her.
"Simply put, this is the end of the line."
Mattis let out a tired, somewhat vulnerable sigh.
"In recent years, the Order of Chaldea has become deeply concerned about the danger presented by untrained, uneducated mages outside of their control. Those of you who fail the admissions test or wash out during the academic semester before achieving disciple status will be forced to undergo the cropping."
A murmur passed through the group, despite Mattis's intensity. Lee frowned and leaned his head in close to Eliza.
"The cropping?" he whispered. "What the hell does that mean?"
Eliza didn't answer him with words. She turned and met his eyes, mouth open, face pale, and shook her head slightly. It was in that moment that Lee remembered one of the other important lessons he'd learned in his time as a freelance mystic. There are certain questions that you should always, always say no to. Chapter 3. The hair on the back of Lee's neck stood up straight, and it wasn't because of the cold. The other two instructors who'd initially been standing with Mattis at the beginning of her speech had moved to position themselves behind and on either side of the group. It didn't take much guesswork for him to figure out that they were intentionally pinning the potential initiates in, ready to swoop on any of them that tried to run.
"Tell me," Lee hissed to Eliza, "what does it mean to go through the cropping?"
Eliza was about to answer when the instructor standing nearest to Lee held a finger up to her lips and shushed them into silence. The instructor was a surprisingly young blonde woman, tall and curvaceous, almost inaptly beautiful. Next to her, lead instructor Mattis had taken a list out of her jacket and was carefully examining it.
"I will call you forward in the order of your initial arrival," she said. "Christoph Gussman, you will be first."
The tall young man Lee had seen walking with puffed-up confidence earlier strode forward. He was closer to him in age than he'd initially thought, probably within a year or two of Lee, just out of high school.
"To answer the question that I'm sure you all have on the tips of your tongues, yes, my father is the great Olaf Gussman," said Christoph. "The only reason I'm at this frozen shithole is because of the recent change in policy by the Order of Chaldea on accepting homeschooled students. I am as capable in my spellcraft as any of the alumni of Stonepath Academy."
"That's quite enough," said Mattis.
"The test is simple, Christoph. Please demonstrate a basic spell from one of the 5 primary schools of magic. Elemental, nature, conjuration, illusion, or alteration. Can I cast one from each?" Christoph let out a forced laugh. "I suppose there's no need."
He held his arms out in front of him in what almost looked like a combat stance, a way of standing that would have fit easily into a fluid, momentum-based martial art. Then, Christoph exhaled, whispering something under his breath as he shot an arm forward, palm first.
A small plume of flame burst forth harmlessly into the open air, similar to a blast from a flamethrower. Kristoff grinned and took a bow. Lee couldn't help but roll his eyes. He watched as Kristoff took a single step toward the university's gate before proceeding to fall head over heels as his foot slipped on the ice. A tiny giggle came from behind Lee, and he looked over his shoulder to see the petite ghost girl holding her hands over her mouth. "Very good, Kristoff," said Mattis. "That is acceptable. And in the future, watch your step while walking outside of the university. The ice is treacherous." Kristoff swore under his breath as he rose to his feet. Mattis continued down the list, calling another student forward. It was the older woman who gave a resolved nod and made her way forward without hesitation. Outside of a few words spoken by the lead instructor and each of the potential students taking the test, the area outside the university was silent. The howl of the icy wind was the only ambient noise, and it fit Lee's mood perfectly, as his intuition caught up with the situation in which he'd placed himself. He couldn't cast any spells, and it wasn't as though he hadn't tried before. When Zoe had first discovered that she had the potential at the tender age of 12, Lee's childish envy had pushed him to attempt to follow in her footsteps. He just didn't have it in him, which he'd come to consider to be a blessing after a while. Mystics were exceedingly rare in the supernatural world, seemingly ignored and overlooked by the Order of Chaldea. He'd never had to disguise his abilities or think of the consequences of applying them for his own gain, given how minor and benign they were. Up until that moment, there'd never been a situation when he felt like he actually needed the power to cast arcane spells. "Toma Fujino," said Mattis. A few others had been called up while Lee had been lost in his thoughts, and they'd all managed a spell without much trouble. The next in line to take the test, the teenager named Toma Fujino, seemed to drag his feet as he made his way forward. "Ugh, all right," he muttered. "A spell. Just need to cast a spell." He rubbed his hands together and took a deep breath. Lee caught a glimpse of Toma's face and immediately felt a stab of sympathy. There were deep bags under the boy's eyes from lack of sleep, and his brow was heavily furrowed. "Whenever you're ready, Toma," said Mattis. Toma nodded his head. He assumed a different casting stance than Lee had seen from the others, bringing his hands up to either side of his face, almost like blinders. He continued taking loud breaths, sucking in air and coughing slightly as he exhaled. A vein became visible in his forehead, and Toma made a low grunting noise. "The goal's to cast a spell, not shit your pants," called Kristoff. Toma's face turned bright red, and he lost his footing as though someone had physically pushed him. Lee found himself rooting for him as he started over, setting his hands into his casting stance and putting every ounce of his will into the act of casting his spell. His grunting grew even louder. Kristoff made another joke which set a few of the students who'd already passed their exam into a raucous round of laughter. Toma ignored it this time, and after a few more seconds, a tiny sphere of light appeared in front of him, no larger than a marble, but glowing bright. "There!" gasped Toma. He fell forward onto his knees. Is that enough?" Lead instructor Mattis sighed. "Yes, that should do," she said. "This only gives you initiate status, Toma. You'll need to make a significant amount of progress moving forward if—" She didn't finish her sentence, which brought the cropping and whatever it entailed back to the front of Lee's awareness. The way Toma broke into desperate, almost addled-sounding laughter as he made his way over to stand in line by the gate only further emphasized the stakes. Lee turned to Eliza, interested in getting a genuine answer out of her concerning what happened when he failed the admissions test. She was already stepping forward in anticipation of her own test, however. "Eliza Willis," said lead instructor Mattis. Eliza only took the time to pull her hood back before crossing her arms over her chest and letting out a quick exhale. A shimmering field of blue energy composed of tiny glowing spheres began spinning around her, causing her hair to flutter and preventing the wind-blown snow from getting any closer to her. It was even more impressive than Kristoff's casual display of talent, and Lee wasn't the only one who noticed. "Impressive," said Kristoff. "You're probably the best here, outside of myself." "That's more than enough, Eliza," said Mattis. "Thank you."
Eliza looked visibly relieved as she let her spell subside. She held a hand over her heart and made her way to join the line on shaky legs. Lee rubbed his sweaty palms together. It was just him and one other potential initiate left. "David Johnson," said Lead Instructor Mattis. The teenager standing next to Lee took a step back, shaking his head. I can't," he said. "Please, I didn't choose to be here. My magic doesn't work like the others. It's only when I'm angry." "David," said Mattis, "you need to take the test." "But I'll fail it," he shouted. "I know I will. And then you'll force me to undergo the cropping, and I'll forget my brothers, my dad. Damn it, even the girl I love is associated with the Order." "Harper, if you would," said Mattis. The blonde female instructor that had been standing behind Lee pushed her way by him. She held one hand out, grasping at her wrist with the other, and sharply exhaled. A set of purple bindings appeared around David's wrists and began dragging him forward. Lee's anxiety got the better of him, and he couldn't help but ask the crucial question. "What's he talking about?" he asked. "What does the cropping do to a person?" Surprisingly, Harper was the one that replied. She had intense blue eyes, as cold as the snow and the ice, and she let them settle on Lee for an instant while still maintaining the spell that held David. "How is it that you don't know already?" she asked. Lee shook his head, not liking the way Harper's gaze narrowed in suspicion. She wasn't that much older than he was, maybe in her mid-20s, and scarily beautiful in the way that only a few lucky women are. "It's a necessary precaution," said Mattis. "There is no way to truly remove the potential from a mage. The cropping is a regiment of dream weaving, illusion magic, that selectively destroys certain parts of a person's memory." "You're saying that you can make someone forget that they can cast magic?" asked Lee. "It's a broader process than that," said Mattis. "The cropping removes any memory even tangentially related to the supernatural," said Harper in a flat voice. "You'll forget everything you know about Primhaven, magic, and any memories you have of any mage you've encountered, regardless of whether they're friends, family, or minor acquaintances." Lee's hand went to his head even as he tried to stifle his reaction. For 5 years, he'd searched for Zoe and barely made any progress. He was